12 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, he dumped me over text. Said he was going back to his ex. I sold the ring, flew to Paris, and turned my heartbreak into art. When he showed up months later, begging for a second chance, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I am not your unfinished business." The diamond on my finger caught the light one final time as I twisted it off. 5 years of love, 18 months of planning, and just 12 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, Lucas ended it with a text. A text. Not even a call. The club around me pulsed with neon lights and too loud bass. The kind of place I'd never step into voluntarily if not for Zoe's insistence. She said it would be good for me, a night out before the big day. "Your last night of freedom," she joked, forcing a hot pink cocktail into my hand and pushing me into the center of our friend group, all clad in matching Team Bride t-shirts. I should have known Lucas would hate this. He didn't like when I went out without him. He said it was because he worried about me, but I'd long learned that worry and control can look deceptively similar. I was smiling at the thought of how annoyed he'd be, a private little rebellion, when my phone buzzed in my purse. I fished it out lazily, expecting a short, passive-aggressive check-in. What I got instead was the death knell of everything I had believed to be true. "Lucas, I can't go through with tomorrow. I need space to figure out what I really want. I'm sorry." I read it once. Twice. A third time, waiting for the punchline. Lucas loved elaborate jokes. Last Christmas he gave me an empty PlayStation box and filmed my reaction before giving me the real gift. I thought maybe this was one of those moments. But the second message never came. "Liv." Zoe appeared at my elbow. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I handed her the phone in silence. She read the message, her mouth tightening, her eyes flaring wide. "That absolute piece of garbage," she whispered, then spun to signal the rest of the group. "Girls, circle up. Code red." "Call him," they urged. So I did. His contact photo appeared on screen. Us smiling on a beach last summer. My thumb hesitated over the call button, but I pressed it anyway. Voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. He turned his phone off. I said quietly, strangely steady. He canceled our wedding by text and turned off his phone. A hush fell over the group, our once joyous circle now huddled in disbelief. They stared at me, waiting for me to cry, to scream, to shatter. But I didn't. Not yet. Inside, something cracked. But instead of an avalanche of pain, there was a strange calm, like my soul had stepped outside my body and was watching from across the room. Then my phone rang again. For one ridiculous second I thought it was him. A correction. A prank reveal. It was Regina. Lucas's mother. Regina had never liked me, though she pretended to. I could always feel the judgment beneath her smiles, the way she evaluated me like a stock option. Till I answered. "Elizabeth," she began, using my full name like she always did, even though I'd told her repeatedly that I preferred Liv. "Lucas told me about his decision. I'm going to need you to return the engagement ring. It's a family heirloom." I blinked. "A what?" "A family heirloom," she repeated crisply. "Passed down from his grandmother's estate. We'll arrange to have it picked up tomorrow morning." That was news to me. I remembered when Lucas and I had gone ring shopping together. He'd shown me the receipt himself. Tiffany's. 3 weeks before he proposed. "That's funny," I said, my voice as icy as the diamond still sitting on my finger. Because I distinctly remember Lucas bragging about the discount he got. Brand new. Not a whisper of family sentiment attached. Well, the money for it came from family funds, so technically. Before she could finish, my Aunt Maggie, who'd overheard the conversation, snatched the phone from my hand. "Listen here, you entitled witch," she snapped. "Your son just shattered my niece's heart with a text message." A text message. The night before her wedding. "You're lucky she doesn't sell that ring and buy herself a yacht with your name painted on the side, just to spite you." I expected to feel embarrassed. But all I could do was smile. Watching my normally composed aunt go full mama bear was the first real moment of joy I'd felt all night. When Maggie handed the phone back, I simply said, "I'll think about the ring." Then hung up. Back at Zoe's apartment, my friends tried to hold me together. They offered ice cream, wine, their loud indignation on my behalf. But I stayed quiet, numb. I sat on Zoe's couch, staring at nothing while life rearranged itself around me. This time yesterday I was a to-be bride. Today I was, what? Not a bride. Not a fiancée. Not exactly heartbroken either. Not yet. has anyone talked to Travis? I asked suddenly. Lucas's best man, Zoe's fiancé Brad, grabbed his phone. I'll call. He put it on speaker. Travis answered after 3 rings, voice thick with sleep. Wait, he actually did it? Travis's voice crackled. I thought he was just talking crazy. What do you mean? Brad asked, confused. He's been seeing Maddison again, Travis admitted after a pause. I blinked. Maddison? His ex from college. He said he was having second thoughts. I told him he was insane, but he said... He trailed off. Shit. I shouldn't be saying this. But it was too late. Maddison. The one he used to call, the one that got away. The same Maddison who'd conveniently moved back to town 3 months ago. My phone buzzed again. A message. Travis. Dude, she's selling the ring. You still have time to stop her before she finds out about you and Maddison. Fix this before it gets out of hand. My mouth went dry. I stared at the message, rereading it as my hands turned to ice. Then another message arrived. Travis. Sorry. Wrong person. Too late. Lucas hadn't just gotten cold feet. He hadn't made a panicked mistake. He had been planning this. Every second. Every word. Every carefully delayed decision. Lucas was always in love with someone else and only proposed to me because he thought that chapter was closed. But when the real one came back into his life, he didn't hesitate. He was leaving me for Maddison. My jaw clenched. My chest rose and fell in deep, slow breaths. I didn't cry. But the numbness cracked. And underneath it wasn't sorrow, it was rage. 5 years. 5 years of twisting myself to fit into the shrinking mold of his expectations. 5 years I couldn't get back. I need some air, I muttered, rising from the couch and stepping out onto Zoe's balcony. The night was cool, crisp. The wind slapped against my skin like a wake-up call. I looked down at the ring still on my finger. 3-carat emerald-cut platinum band. Flashy. Loud. Designed to impress his friends more than it ever suited me. With a deliberate twist, I slid it off and held it up to the city lights. This ring would fund my new life. A life shaped by my choices. Not his. When I stepped back into the apartment, everyone fell silent. I need a lawyer, I said flatly. And information on how to start getting refunds from our vendors. Zoe blinked. What are you going to do? I smiled. And for the first time since it all fell apart, it wasn't bitter. It was real. I'm not sure yet. But I know what I'm not going to do. I picked up the ring again and looked at it one last time before slipping it into its velvet box. I'm not going to beg a man who never really valued me to take me back. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. I woke up on what should have been my wedding day with swollen eyes and a strange lightness in my chest. Zoe had insisted I sleep in her guest room, afraid to leave me alone. But I hadn't cried all night. I hadn't collapsed, wailed, or begged the universe to turn time back. I just lay there wide-eyed, staring at the white ceiling and thinking he really did it. Sunlight filtered through unfamiliar curtains as I checked the time. 9:17 a.m. By now I should have been at the salon. My bridesmaids should have been fussing over my hair, my mom wiping away tears as I stepped into my dress. Instead, I was scrolling through 67 missed calls and over 100 texts, most from guests and extended family who had just found out. The group chat from Lucas's side had gone radio silent. No one from his family had reached out. Except one. The doorbell rang. Zoe popped her head into the guest room. I didn't order anything. She left and I followed, still wrapped in her oversized robe. I was halfway down the hall when I heard his voice. I need to talk to her. Olivia. I know you're here. My bare feet froze on the wood floor. Zoe turned, her expression darkening. She doesn't want to see you, Lucas. I just need 5 minutes. He was here. Zoe turned, saw my face and raised an eyebrow. I nodded. I didn't know why I nodded. Maybe I just wanted to look him in the eye. Maybe I needed to hear him lie to my face. I walked into the living room slowly, heart pounding. There he was. Lucas Montgomery, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, holding a wilted bouquet of roses. Beside him stood Regina, immaculate in pearls, not a hair out of place. Good. He looked awful. Olivia. He started, taking a step forward. I didn't move. Stop right there. He froze mid-step. I'm so sorry about the text, he said quickly. I panicked. I needed to think. Have you finished thinking? I asked, voice cold but calm. His jaw clenched. I want to talk about us. No, I said. You want to talk about you. Regina took a step forward now, hands clasped. Elizabeth dear, every couple has pre-wedding jitters. Lucas made a mistake in how he handled his nerves, but surely you can forgive one moment of weakness. One moment of weakness? Echoed my lip curling. Is that what we're calling months of sneaking around with his ex while positioning himself to access my inheritance? Regina blinked. You're what? Lucas turned to her quickly. Mom. You told me she didn't know, she gasped. Silence. The final nail slid neatly into place. There was confirmation. I took a step closer, not afraid anymore. Do you want to keep lying, Lucas? Because I've seen the text. From Travis. The one where he tells you to stop me from selling the ring before I find out about you and Maddison. Before you lose access to my grandmother's money. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Tried again. It wasn't like that. Yes, I saw Maddison a few times, but just as friends. In hotel rooms? I said. Bez, I saw the charges. You used our joint wedding account to pay for them. The one I contributed to every month. His face turned pale. You had no right to go through my statements. It was our account, Lucas. Meant for wedding expenses. I was balancing the final payments. Regina's voice cut in shrill now. This is a private matter. You shouldn't have. No, I interrupted, raising my voice. What I shouldn't have done was say yes when he proposed. The silence was razor sharp. Lucas blinked, visibly shaken. You don't mean that. You're angry. You're just trying to hurt me. I laughed, and it echoed like shattering glass. Oh, Lucas. This isn't about hurt. This is about clarity. He tried one last time, stepping toward me. We've been together 5 years. You can't just throw that away. I let my arms drop to my sides, took a deep breath, and said the words I never imagined I'd say on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I'm not marrying you. Not today. Not in 2 months. Not ever. Regina gasped as if I'd just slapped her. Lucas reeled like he'd been punched. And just then, as if fate had impeccable comedic timing, my phone rang again. I picked it up without breaking eye contact. Yes, the wedding is cancelled, I said coolly to the florist. Please deliver the flowers to Mercy Hospital's children's ward instead. You can charge the delivery fee to me. Lucas's mouth hung open. You're donating the flowers? He asked, voice cracking. Yes. At least they'll bring someone joy. I hung up. Regina stepped forward again, now with a trembling smile. Let's all calm down. You've had a shock. This doesn't need to be a final decision. It is. But the ring, she said quickly, it's still. I sold it. The words landed like bricks. Lucas's jaw tightened. You what? It's gone, I said. Sold yesterday. Got $16,400 for it. That ring cost me $18,000, he shouted. I raised an eyebrow. Legally, it's a conditional gift. You broke the condition by ending the engagement. You had no right. Legally, I had every right, I said. Your lawyer can confirm. Regina looked like she was about to faint. If you don't leave, I said calmly, I will call security. Or the police. Your choice. Lucas opened his mouth again, but I was done. Goodbye, Lucas. He stared at me for a long beat. And then he left. Regina followed, defeated. The door clicked shut behind them. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding, and I laughed. This time not from bitterness or sarcasm. It was freedom. Later that afternoon, I opened my wedding planner notebook and made 2 columns. Lost. The wedding. The venue. The future I thought I wanted. Lucas. Gained. Clarity. Freedom. Control. My voice. Zoe brought me tea and sat beside me, eyeing the notebook. What's that? Inventory. She blinked. You okay? I smiled. I will be. But I need to do something first. Like what? I flipped to a clean page and wrote in bold letters. Paris Fund. Monday morning, I walked into First National Bank with my engagement ring in a small velvet pouch. I hadn't touched it since the night Lucas ended things. Now it felt like dead weight in my hand, cold and lifeless. The diamond caught the fluorescent lights as I placed it on the counter of the safety deposit box area. My breath came in quiet, controlled waves. I was here to end one chapter and fund the next. I'd like to access my box, please, I told the clerk, sliding over my ID. Inside the small, windowless room, I opened the box I shared with my Aunt Maggie for legal documents. There it was, a cream-colored folder with my name written in my grandmother's script. Grandma Rose. She had been meticulous about keeping records. Every bond, every policy, every important paper filed and dated. Tucked between insurance documents and appraisal certificates was the original jewelry appraisal for the engagement ring. Lucas had claimed it was worth $18,000, a deal he said he got through a friend. The appraisal listed it at $16,900, and the receipt from Tiffany's was dated exactly 3 weeks before he proposed. So much for it being a family heirloom. 1 hour later, I walked into Precision Jewelers, tucked inside a gleaming commercial building downtown. The walls smelled of clean linen and leather. A middle-aged woman behind the counter eyed me kindly. "How can I help you today?" "I'm looking to sell this," I said, placing the ring on a black velvet pad. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing, slipping on gloves and examining it under a loupe. "It's a stunning stone," she murmured. 3-carat emerald cut platinum band. Tiffany's setting. Very clean cut. "I know," I said, my voice even. "But I'm not looking for compliments. Just the check." She chuckled. "Understood." After 20 minutes of appraisal, a phone call to a buyer, and a whispered conversation behind a closed office door, she returned. "I can offer you $16,400 today. Certified check." I nodded. "Deal." No hesitation? Not even a little. She tilted her head. "Just for the record, he made a mistake." I smiled faintly. "I didn't." She printed the receipt and handed me the check. As I walked out into the cold spring air, I didn't feel sadness. Not even a flicker of regret. The ring, once a symbol of love, was now freedom. Cold, hard freedom in my purse. Back at Zoe's apartment, I opened my notebook and wrote. Paris fund. A ring resale, $16,400. A vendor refunds pending? The thought of Paris didn't feel impulsive anymore. It felt inevitable. My grandmother had once dreamed of going to Paris after Grandpa died. She had saved, even planned the trip, but never went. She told me once over tea, "The right time never comes, sweetheart. You have to make it right." I hadn't understood her then. I did now. That afternoon I visited my wedding planner, Melissa. Her office was in a charming townhouse with white shutters and a hanging sign that read, "Ever After Events." I hadn't called ahead. I didn't need to. When she opened the door and saw me standing there with my binder in one hand and my check in the other, she didn't say a word. She just pulled me into a hug that nearly cracked my composure. "I heard," she said softly. "I'm so sorry, Olivia." "I need to cancel everything," I said simply. Melissa pulled me inside, sat me on the couch in her cozy office, and poured me a cup of chamomile tea. Then she took the notebook from my hands and flipped it open like a general reviewing a battle map. "We'll start with the venue." She made calls while I sipped tea and stared out the window at nothing. To my shock, the venue, Riverdale Gardens, had already authorized a 75% refund of our deposit. They said it wasn't standard, but they'd made an exception given the circumstances. Melissa's contacts worked magic. Caterer, 60% refund, the food could be repurposed. Photographer, 50% deposit returned. DJ, full refund minus a small booking fee. Florist, couldn't refund, but canceled the remaining balance and agreed to deliver the flowers to Mercy Hospital's children's wing free of charge. All in all, we recovered $12,000, give or take a few hundred. "I have never seen this happen," Melissa said, calculating numbers. "You're looking at over $28,000 total, including the ring." I stared at her. "I don't even know what to say." She smiled gently. "You don't need to say anything. Just tell me what you're going to do with it." I hesitated. "I'm going to Paris." Her eyes lit up. Now that's the best kind of revenge plan I've ever heard. Back at Zoe's apartment, I sat on the floor, my laptop open, surrounded by sticky notes and a sense of unfamiliar clarity. To-do lists formed quickly. Paris prep list. Lease. Sell furniture. Talk to work about remote options. Apply for visa. Book one-way ticket. Buy new sketchbook. I wasn't just going to disappear. I was going to reclaim my life. Zoe peeked over my shoulder. You're really doing this? Yeah, I said. No more waiting for someone else to validate my dreams. You're sure it's not just running away? Maybe it is, I admitted. But it's still forward motion. She looked at me a long moment and nodded. Okay then. Let's plan your escape. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor like we used to in college. I told her about the ring, the vendor refunds, the woman at the jeweler who looked at me like I was fireproof. He grinned. You kind of are. I blinked. What? You are fireproof, Liv, she said softly. Lucas didn't break you. He lit the match. You did the burning. I didn't reply. But I knew she was right. The next day I visited my office. My boss, Janet, looked surprised to see me. The news had already reached the office, of course. In a place like ours, rumors were faster than emails. I'm okay, I told her before she could ask. But I'd like to talk to you about working remotely. From where? Paris. She blinked. Are you serious? Yes. Temporarily at first, 3 months. I'd like to take some art classes there and I can manage all my clients online. We've talked about expanding into European markets, haven't we? Janet rubbed her chin. You're one of our best people. Let me talk to the partners. I thanked her and walked out of her office with a strange mix of nerves and thrill. In the hallway as I turned the corner I nearly crashed into someone. Sorry, I mumbled, not looking up. Olivia. My heart dropped. It was Maddison Porter. Tall, sleek, designer-clad and almost absurdly polished. Lucas's ex, his current, the woman he claimed not to be seeing that way. Her mouth parted in surprise. I'm so sorry. For what part exactly? I asked coldly. Sleeping with my fiancé or showing up after the damage? She blinked. Neither. I didn't know he hadn't told you. I narrowed my eyes. We reconnected in February, she continued. He told me you two were breaking up. I believed him. February. We were tasting wedding cakes in February. She looked genuinely upset. When I found out the truth, I ended things immediately. I crossed my arms. And what now? I'm here for a campaign meeting. I was actually coming to warn you. Warn me. He's telling people you had a breakdown. That you ran off and disappeared. I laughed bitterly. Classic Lucas. Rewrite the story so he's the victim. She hesitated, then pulled a card from her purse. Here. My old landlady in Paris. She rents to Americans. Good rates. I stared at the card. Tell her Maddie sent you. I took it. Thanks, I said quietly. We stared at each other a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. And just like that, the last loose thread of my past began to unravel. That night, I sat cross-legged on Zoe's couch, my computer open. Flight booked. One-way ticket to Paris. Departure date? The same day Lucas and I were supposed to leave for our honeymoon. Perfect. The card Maddison gave me sat untouched on the coffee table for 2 days, its elegant cursive name, a Madame Rousseau, staring up at me like an invitation I hadn't yet dared to open. I stared at it now, cross-legged in Zoe's apartment, a spreadsheet open on my laptop, bank accounts logged in on one tab, a digital version of my Paris fund forming before my eyes. $16,400 from the ring. $12,200 from the vendor refunds. $9,000 in personal savings. $1,300 from my last paycheck. Total, $38,900. Not endless but enough. I could stretch that for months if I lived modestly. More if my boss approved the remote work. I called the embassy. Looked up visa options. Ran simulations on cost of living apps. My fingers flew across the keyboard like they were trying to escape gravity. When I finally paused, Zoe peeked over my shoulder and whistled. You're doing this, she said, voice soft and awed. I am, I replied, a small smile blooming. For real this time. Do you want help packing? Canceling your lease? Telling your landlord you're bailing to live your best Parisian life? I snorted. I already emailed him. Month to month means I'm free to go. Zoe reached into the drawer beside the couch and pulled out something. A folder. Red leather, slightly worn. What's that? She flipped it open. A fresh start binder. I used it when I was job hunting in college. Now it's yours. Inside were labeled tabs. Documents. Apartment. Finances. Dreams. Dreams. I teased. He shrugged. Figure you'll need that one the most. The next morning I arrived early at the office, dressed in jeans and a navy sweater. Something uncharacteristically casual. Janet greeted me with a brow raise and a smirk. Someone's already on vacation mode. Something like that, I said. We walked into her office. She motioned to close the door. I didn't hesitate. I've finalized my numbers, I said. If I live reasonably, I have enough to be in Paris for 4 months minimum. If remote work's possible, I can make it longer. He gave me a long, thoughtful look. I spoke with the partners, she said. You're good at what you do, Olivia. Clients love you. And frankly, our Europe division has been floating in theory for too long. My breath hitched. So, we'll try it for 3 months. I could have kissed her. You'll check in weekly via Zoom. Send reports. Same KPIs. And, she gave me a pointed look. This is not a vacation. If it turns into one, it's over. I nodded. Understood. You leave when? I hesitated. 3 weeks. Same day I was supposed to fly to Bora Bora. Her lips pressed into a sympathetic line. Bora Bora's beautiful. But Paris? Paris can change you. That night, while packing the remnants of a life I no longer wanted, I found something I hadn't expected. An old envelope, tucked into the back pocket of my wedding planner notebook. Addressed in looping old-fashioned cursive. My dearest Olivia. Love always, Grandma Rose. I slid the letter out with shaking fingers. Happiness isn't found in perfect plans, sweetheart. It's found in perfect adaptability. My biggest regret? Never visiting Paris. I saved for it. Dreamed of it. But I kept waiting for the right time. The time never came. Make yours come. Don't live in some days. My throat closed. This wasn't about running. It never had been. This was about becoming. Over the next 10 days, I dismantled the life Lucas and I had built together. Sold my furniture. Donated my clothes. Gave away the beige couch he insisted on, the espresso machine he'd never let me touch, and the books I'd stopped reading because they weren't serious enough. I unsubscribed from bridal lists. Cleared out my email folders titled Venue Ideas, Menu Options, and Lucas's Preferences. Each deletion was a little death. Each was a tiny resurrection. The weekend before my flight, I booked an appointment with my hairdresser and told her to do something different. You mean like, layers? No, I said. I mean like a new identity. She laughed. I didn't. I walked out with a sleek, shoulder-length bob and sun-kissed auburn highlights. Zoe gasped when she saw me. You don't look like Olivia. I tilted my head. That's the point. 3 days before takeoff, I emailed Madame Rousseau, the landlady from Maddison's card. Her reply came in under 2 hours. Dear Olivia. I remember Maddie well. I have a studio available in the 11th arrondissement. Quiet street. Affordable rent. Nothing fancy, but it has a soul. Me know. M. Rousseau. I booked it on the spot. 2 suitcases. 1 carry-on. My entire life condensed into 48 kilograms. The night before my flight, Zoe and I curled up on her couch one last time. Do you want me to drive you to the airport? No. I want the moment to be mine. She teared up. You're so brave, Liv. I'm so free, I corrected, a quiet smile on my lips. And I've never been either of those things before. At Charles de Gaulle Airport, the plane taxied under silver clouds. According to my old itinerary, Lucas and I should have been landing in Bora Bora, wrapped in tropical linens and champagne flutes. Instead, I stepped into Paris holding 2 suitcases, a single return-less ticket and a name no one here knew. Olivia Palmer. No longer a fiancée. Not a runaway bride. Not a jilted woman. Just a woman, unclaimed, unbroken, and beginning again. The rain was light but persistent, tracing silver streaks down the cab window as Paris unfolded around me like a storybook being turned 1 page at a time. Landmarks I'd only ever seen in photographs rose out of the mist. The Eiffel Tower, its peak swallowed by low clouds. The golden dome of Les Invalides gleaming faintly in the distance. The cab turned onto a narrow cobbled street and stopped in front of a cream-colored building with pale blue shutters and wrought iron balconies wrapped in tiny vines. Voila, mademoiselle. The driver smiled in the rearview mirror. This was it. Rue Lapras, 11th arrondissement. My new address. I stepped out with a deep breath and was instantly soaked through the shoulders of my jacket. My suitcases thudded onto the wet sidewalk. It wasn't a honeymoon suite in Bora Bora. It wasn't a five-star hotel or a glossy apartment overlooking the Seine. But something about the building's worn elegance, the flower boxes, the creaky shutters, felt real. And real was exactly what I needed. Before I could knock, the door opened. "Ah, you must be Olivia." A petite woman in her 70s, lipstick the color of red wine and hair twisted into a bun, beamed up at me. Come in, you are wet like a duck." "Madame Rousseau." She moved fast for someone her age, leading me up 4 narrow flights of stairs, all the while chatting in brisk, lightly accented English. "Maddie tells me you are brave. Coming here alone. At your age. Is perfect. I came to Paris alone when I was young too. You will not regret." She unlocked a navy blue door tucked under the roofline and gestured dramatically. "Voila. Home." I stepped inside. The studio was tiny, barely more than 1 room, but it was all windows and angles, old wood floors and slanted ceilings. A dormer window overlooked a quiet courtyard draped in ivy. The scent of rain and old books lingered in the air. There was a small kitchenette, a narrow wardrobe and a bed tucked into the corner with a mismatched quilt. A little table with 2 chairs. A bookshelf half filled with forgotten paperbacks. A black cat stared at me from the window ledge across the alley, as if deciding whether to approve of my arrival. "This is perfect," I said softly. Madame Rousseau beamed. "You see, you do not need big things to feel big things." She handed me a heavy brass key, then collected the first month's rent, in cash as promised. Before leaving, she winked. "You need anything, plumber, wine, heartbreak, advice, you knock. I am always home." That night I unpacked my life one item at a time. A framed photo of my parents, my grandmother's letter, now placed reverently on the bookshelf, my favorite sweater, and a set of watercolors I hadn't touched in years. Exhaustion pulled at my bones, but my mind was alive, electric. Outside, the rain had stopped. Paris shimmered beneath street lamps. I stood by the window, forehead against the glass, and whispered to the rooftops, "You don't know who I am." And for once that felt like a gift. The next morning, golden light streamed into the apartment like a benediction. The rain was gone, replaced by crisp spring air and birdsong echoing between buildings. I found a café just down the street with chipped chairs and checkered tablecloths. My French was clumsy, but I managed to order a café crème and a croissant. The barista didn't correct me. No one gave me pitying looks. No one asked about wedding dresses or missing grooms. Here I was, just Olivia Palmer, a woman drinking coffee in a city that didn't know her. After breakfast, I took the metro to the Latin Quarter. My grandmother's letter had mentioned an old friend who ran a bookshop there, Clea Boyce, the name tucked into a sentence like a secret. The shop had no address, just Library Dure painted above the door, and a bell that rings like wind chimes. It took me 3 tries to find the right place. But when I stepped inside, I knew immediately. Books climbed the walls, spilling into crooked towers across the floor. A fireplace crackled in the back, despite the mild weather. Candles flickered on windowsills. And above the door, in hand-painted script, were the words, "Library Dure." "Bonjour," came a low, elegant voice. I turned to see a tall woman with silver-streaked black hair and a deep red scarf tied effortlessly at her throat. She looked like she had stepped from an old film, poised, unreadable, striking. "I'm looking for Clea Boyce," I said nervously. The woman blinked. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "Depends who's asking." I took a step forward. "My name is Olivia Palmer. My grandmother was Rose Palmer." Clea gasped. "Rose's Olivia?" She crossed the room in a flash and enveloped me in a warm, lavender-scented hug. "She wrote about you all the time," she said, holding me at arm's length. "But she didn't say you were coming to Paris." "It wasn't planned," I admitted. She raised an eyebrow. "Those are the best kind of decisions." Over cups of bergamot tea in the back of the bookshop, I told Clea the abridged version. A broken engagement, a cancelled wedding, a one-way ticket. I left out Lucas's full betrayal. I didn't need him to take up space in this sacred place. Clea listened without interrupting, her long fingers wrapped around a ceramic mug. "So you came to Paris to heal?" "Not just that," I said. "I came to remember what I wanted. I used to paint." "Used to," she echoed. "I gave it up. My ex, he wasn't very supportive. He called it a hobby. Something I'd grow out of. Her lips thinned. Rose was a painter too. I blinked. She was. Clea nodded. She nearly stayed in Paris to study art. But she went home. Family obligations. Your grandfather. She told me her biggest regret was not painting more. I swallowed hard. Do not make the same mistake, Clea said gently. I didn't reply. But something in my chest shifted. That afternoon I found a watercolor studio tucked behind a creperie near Place de la Bastille. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Beginner and returning artists welcome. Classes Tuesdays and Thursdays. Instructor, Marcel." I stepped inside. The room smelled of turpentine and linen. Paint-splattered easels lined the walls. Light poured in from tall windows like blessings. The instructor, Marcel, was a gruff man in his 60s with wild gray hair and a paintbrush tucked behind one ear. "Portfolio?" he asked. I hesitated. "I don't have one." He stared at me. "I haven't painted in years," I added. He nodded slowly. "Then you will be my favorite kind. Unspoiled." He told me to bring a brush, a set of pans and an open mind. Class started Tuesday. That night I sat at my little table by the window, opened my sketchbook and dipped my brush into water. The first stroke trembled. The second less so. By the third I was painting the rooftops outside my window washed in dusk light. The colors bled. My wrist relaxed. My breathing steadied. I wasn't thinking about Lucas. I wasn't thinking about the wedding that wasn't. I was just being. And somewhere in that watercolor blur of cobalt and slate gray I felt it. Myself. Returning. Marcel's class smelled like wet brushes, old turpentine and quiet pressure. The studio was drafty and half-lit, its wooden floors warped by decades of paint spills and pacing artists. A single space heater buzzed in the corner like it was fighting for relevance. On the first day there were 5 of us. A retired Italian architect named Leo, a quiet redhead named Emily who painted only florals, a shy teen named Bruno with sketchbooks full of dark fantasy creatures, and a Canadian woman named Margaret who always wore paint-smeared shawls and asked questions in rapid French. Then there was me, Olivia Palmer. No label. No art degree. Just an ex-bride with a second-hand brush and something to prove to no one except myself. Marcel didn't give lectures. He gave grunts and silence, and once, when my color layering turned unexpectedly good, a small nod that felt like a standing ovation. By the second week I'd bought a new set of pans, traded my water-damaged sketchbook for a pristine one, and signed up for a second class. I painted rooftops and raindrops, café umbrellas and the way Paris light turned buildings gold at 4 p.m. My hands ached. My shoulders stiffened. But my soul started humming again. To stretch my savings, and mostly to give my life rhythm, I applied for a job at a café 3 blocks from my apartment. The window sign read, "Aide Demandé. Help wanted." I walked in during a lull between lunch and dinner, holding a freshly printed CV written in passable French. The owner, Philippe, was balding, gray-eyed and constantly humming Sinatra songs he couldn't pronounce. "You speak French?" he asked, skeptical. "Un peu," I answered. "But I learn fast." He studied me then shrugged. "Americans are good for business. Tourists like seeing other tourists." I started the next morning. The café was small. 6 tables inside, 4 outside. We served espresso, croissants, croque-monsieurs, and wine no one ever finished before asking for something colder. I worked mornings 3 days a week. Took orders, wiped tables and practiced rolling my R's. It was honest work. Grounding. "Your accent is terrible," Philippe said once, smiling as he handed me a tray. "I'm trying." "You're brave." That made me pause. Why? Most Americans come to Paris to be photographed. You came to work. Mornings were for the café. Afternoons, art class. Evenings, long walks across bridges. Sundays, tea with Clea in her bookshop where we talked about literature, grief, and the different kinds of silence a person can live in. Sometimes I forgot about Lucas for entire days. When I remembered him, it wasn't with anger. It was detachment. Like remembering a movie I once thought was brilliant, only to realize it hadn't aged well at all. One rainy Thursday I painted until my fingers cramped. A soft study of wet cobblestones, glistening under amber streetlights, using only shades of blue and gray. It wasn't technically perfect. Marcel would say my brush control was impatient. But it felt honest. That class he hovered behind me for a long while. Then finally he spoke. "You have found your eye," he said, surprising me. "Now you must find your voice." I blinked. What's the difference? The eye shows the world as you see it. The voice shows the world as only you can say it. I sat with that for days. I began painting faster, freer. Letting go of expectations. Not aiming for beauty, just truth. I painted the street lamp outside my window at night. The corner of Clea's bookshop where the shadows always curled. The inside of my cup at the café after long shift. The café regulars I came to know by name. Henri the old poet, Lucille the chain-smoking cellist, Ava the florist with eyebrows always raised in amusement. Paris was no longer foreign. It was mine. Zoe and I still texted every day. She sent me photos of her latest bridal shoot and I sent her mine. Stacks of wet paper pinned to my clothesline, ink-stained fingertips, the cat that stared at me from across the alley. She sent one message that made me pause. "You don't look like someone recovering anymore. You look like someone becoming." I didn't answer for a while. Then I typed back. "Think I am." Clea invited me to her monthly dinner with friends. An eclectic mix of translators, writers, artists, and one shy pastry chef named Alain who barely spoke but made desserts that silenced a room. They welcomed me like I'd been there forever. At the end of the night, I stood outside Clea's building as the wind rustled spring leaves overhead. She touched my arm gently. "Your grandmother would be proud of you, you know." I smiled. "I hope so." "She would," Clea said firmly. "Because you didn't let pain close you. You let it paint you." One evening in late April I walked past a gallery in Montmartre. Its windows were filled with canvases from local artists. A sign on the door caught my eye. "Emerging Artists Showcase. Submissions due May 3rd. I stared at it for a full minute. Should I? I took a photo of the flyer. And that night I painted something new. Something not just about Paris or light or loneliness. Something about beginning again. The next morning I showed Marcel 3 finished paintings. He said nothing for a long while. Then, "You're almost ready." "For what?" "To be seen." The email came on a Monday morning with no fanfare. The subject line read simply, "Exhibition opportunity, Marcel recommendation." I blinked, half awake, standing at my tiny Parisian table, toast in hand, coffee cooling beside a neglected watercolor. The body of the email was short and direct. "Olivia. A small gallery in Montmartre has a last-minute opening for their Emerging Artists Showcase next week. I have recommended you and 2 others. Submit 3 pieces for final selection by Thursday. Marcel." I read it 3 times. Then I sat down, toast untouched, and whispered to the quiet room, "He thinks I'm ready." The man who once told me my strokes had the subtlety of a garden hose now thought I was ready to be seen. Panic bloomed beneath my ribs. I had painted rooftops, cafes, cobblestones, emotions. But this was exposure. That afternoon I carefully laid out my pieces. 1. A watercolor of the view from my dormer window, Paris rooftops at dusk. 2. A study of Clea's bookshop, half in shadow, candlelight brushing the shelves. 3. An abstract piece I called Unraveling, blues and grays and gold bleeding into each other like truth revealing itself. Zoe FaceTimed me while I was repositioning them for the 50th time. "What's that face?" she asked. "I might be in a gallery show." She screamed so loudly I had to lower the volume. "That's amazing." "It's terrifying." "You're ready." I didn't answer. I was too busy looking at Unraveling, wondering if anyone would see what I saw when I made it. The pain of betrayal, yes, but also the dignity of walking away from it. I brought my portfolio to class 2 days later, wrapped in craft paper and tied with twine. Marcel unwrapped the pieces in silence. His eyes moved over each one slowly. His fingers hovered, never touching. I held my breath like I was waiting for a verdict in a courtroom. Finally he spoke. "These will do." Coming from Marcel, that was the equivalent of a standing ovation. 2 days later I received confirmation. All 3 of my pieces had been accepted. The exhibition would open Friday night, 7:30 p.m. at Galerie Montsoir in Montmartre. I sat down on my narrow bed, heart pounding. Outside, church bells rang. My phone buzzed. "Zoe. Friday. 7:30. Montmartre." Got it. Booking my ticket now. Wild horses couldn't keep me from your big night. I stared at her message, blinking hard. He was coming. From another continent. For me. Friday arrived with a sky the color of antique lace. Soft, warm, with just a whisper of golden sun. I wore a navy dress with sleeves that fluttered when I walked and earrings my mother had given me years ago. Zoe arrived at my door at 4 p.m. with a bottle of champagne and eyes that shone with tears. You look like yourself, she said after a long hug. What does that mean? Not the Olivia who got lost in wedding plans. Not the Olivia who wore beige because Lucas said it was more professional. This is the Olivia who once sketched on napkins and dreamed of color. I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered, "Thank you for coming." She smiled. I wouldn't miss your rebirth. Galerie Montsoir was tucked into a side street just off Rue de Martyrs, its windows glowing softly as dusk fell. Inside, the space was warm, intimate, its white walls lined with works from young, hungry artists with hearts bleeding into paint and canvas. Camille, the gallery owner, was exactly what I imagined. Chic, intense, dressed in black linen with red lipstick and a thin notebook always tucked under one arm. When I introduced myself, she gave me a long look before breaking into a smile. Marcel speaks highly of you, she said in elegant French-accented English. Your work is vulnerable, unpretentious. That's rare. I flushed. Thank you. Your piece unraveling, she added, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. I felt that one. It reminded me of something I lost once and something I chose to keep. Zoe squeezed my hand behind my back. As the night wore on, guests trickled in. Locals, tourists, art buyers, a woman who took notes in a moleskin, and a couple who held hands while arguing softly about whether the shadow in the bookshop represented mortality or nostalgia. I sipped champagne and tried not to hyperventilate. Then I noticed a red dot on the label beneath my bookshop painting. Does that mean? I turned to Camille. She nodded. Sold. Someone bought it? They did. Asked to remain anonymous. But they were very specific about your piece. They said it felt like home. I pressed a hand to my chest. I had sold a painting. Someone somewhere was going to hang my art on their wall. 30 minutes later, Zoe nudged me. The man in the brown blazer? He just bought Unraveling. I stared. What? I saw him talking to Camille, pointing at it. And then boom, another red dot. I covered my mouth with both hands. 2 paintings. 2 sold. Not because someone loved me. Not because someone felt sorry for me. But because they saw me. By the time the evening wound down, Marcel had appeared quietly, sipping wine and pretending not to be proud. Clea came too, wrapped in a wool coat, lipstick perfectly applied. She hugged me tightly. Rose would have wept with pride. That nearly did me in. Zoe and I returned to my apartment just past midnight, tipsy on champagne and adrenaline. We sat on my bed, legs tangled, pastries on our laps. I still can't believe it, I said. I can, she replied. I gave her a side eye. You're biased. Maybe, she said. But I saw you when you couldn't even say his name without shaking. Now look at you. I thought of Lucas for the first time that night. What would he think if he saw my name on a gallery wall? And for the first time, I didn't care. Not even a little. He wasn't my audience anymore. I scrolled through Zoe's dozens of photos from the gallery, my paintings framed and spotlit, me talking to a stranger who had tears in her eyes, Zoe grinning in front of the sold stickers like a proud stage mom. In one I was laughing mid-toast with a glass raised high. The caption Zoe had added? To new beginnings. To the girl who turned heartbreak into art. And I smiled deeply as if hearing my own voice out loud for the first time. The week after the gallery show passed in a quiet daze, golden and still. People I didn't know emailed me. Camille asked if I'd consider submitting more work for a winter showcase. Marcel nodded at me in class and said nothing more than, good. Don't get lazy. Which was, in his own grumpy language, a hug. I spent most afternoons sketching in the Marais or perched outside cafes with a cappuccino and a notebook. Paris moved around me, vendors shouting, tourists snapping photos, waiters flirting. And I, for the first time in years, didn't feel like a background character in my own story. Then came the knock. A firm, familiar rhythm. I paused, brushed mid-air. The hair on my arms stood up before I even moved. I crossed the floor and looked through the peephole. My stomach dropped. Lucas. wearing the same gray coat he'd worn the day he proposed. His hair longer. His face thinner. I opened the door but did not step aside. "What are you doing here?" He exhaled, looking like he'd rehearsed this moment on the flight. "I needed to see you." "You flew to Paris?" He nodded. "I saw the gallery photos. Zoe posted them. You're incredible, Liv. I didn't know how to reach you." "You found a way when you wanted to control the story back home," I said evenly. "Heard you've been telling people I had a breakdown. That I ran off, emotionally unstable." His mouth opened but no words came. "You wanted me to look unhinged," I said. "So no one would ask what you did." He shifted. "Okay, yes, I made mistakes. I was ashamed. I was hurt. You were caught." Silence stretched between us. I stared him down, calm but razor sharp. "You came all this way thinking what? That I'd invite you in? That I'd be flattered? I thought maybe, seeing everything you've built, maybe we could talk." "We are." He looked surprised by the coolness in my voice. "Lucas," I said, and each word came like a verdict. "In this life I will never be yours again. Forget it." "Olivia." "No," I snapped, stepping back but leaving the door firm in my hand. "I buried that version of me in a wedding dress that never got worn. The one who loved you. She doesn't live here anymore." He stood in stunned silence. I closed the door. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just final. 3 days passed before he showed up again. This time I was in Marcel's studio, laying a wash of pale blue over a new piece when the bell above the door jingled. I didn't look up until the air in the room shifted. Marcel, standing at the front, stiffened. Then I heard the voice I'd hoped to never hear in this space. "Olivia." I turned slowly. Lucas stood in the middle of the studio, out of place among the paints and palettes, an honest, hard-fought effort that filled this room. Marcel stepped forward. "We don't allow interruptions here," he said in firm, accented English. "I just need a moment," Lucas said, eyes fixed on me. "Please." I stood. Not to move toward him, but to stand taller. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I've been thinking about us," he said quickly. "You and me, we built something. 5 years. You can't just erase that." "You did," I said quietly. "I was scared. I panicked. But I never stopped loving you." "You never started loving me," I corrected. "You loved what I gave you. Comfort. Stability. But me. Well, because if you had, you wouldn't have thrown me away by text and turned off your phone like a coward." Lucas's jaw tensed. "I didn't know how to face you. Good thing you don't have to anymore." He reached into his coat. "I brought something. I kept it after the breakup." Marcel stepped between us. "I think it's time for you to leave." Lucas blinked, startled by the shift. "This is a place for creation," Marcel said, voice like iron. "Not for ghosts who haunt it." Lucas looked at me one last time. His eyes searched mine, maybe for regret. Maybe for softness. He found neither. Marcel didn't touch him, but the line was drawn so clearly Lucas stepped back. He left. And Marcel turned to me. "Are you all right?" I nodded. But my voice shook when I said, "Thank you. You protected the studio from him once," he said simply. "Now it's my turn to protect you." That night I sat by my window, rain pattering softly on the glass. I wrote a letter I never planned to send. "Lucas, I hope someday you understand that what you did wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. You took trust, time, and a version of me I'll never get back. But in return you gave me something you never meant to. Myself. I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I don't need to. Because I'm free. And that, for me, is enough. Olivia." I folded it. Burned it. Watched the ashes drift into the Paris sky. Letting go isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet extinguishing of something that once lit up your whole world, and now deserves only smoke. The morning after Lucas left my studio, the sky over Paris was pink with promise. I stood at the window of my little attic apartment, watching sunlight catch on the wrought iron balconies, and breathed in the stillness. He was gone. Not just from my building or my studio. From me. The spell had finally broken. The girl who once clung to a ghost in a tuxedo, begging for reassurance, was no longer here. She'd been painted over, layer by layer, by every new decision I'd made since stepping off that plane. And what remained? A woman. Whole. Awake. unafraid. At the studio that afternoon, Marcel passed behind my easel and paused. His voice was quiet when he said, "He won't come back." I didn't look up. "I know. And even if he did," he continued, "he would not find the same woman he left behind." This time I did look up. His eyes were kind if a bit flinty. "You paint like someone who has stopped apologizing." I smiled. "Maybe I have." Marcel nodded, then handed me an envelope. "Camille wants to see you." The gallery smelled like wood polish and lavender oil. Camille stood near the far window, clipboard in one hand, espresso in the other. "Olivia," she said, turning toward me. "You've made quite an impression. I'm just glad people connected with the work." "Connected?" She laughed lightly. "They've requested more. I've had 3 inquiries for commissions. One woman said your painting made her cry in the back hallway." I blinked. "Really?" Camille's smile softened. "Art that makes people feel something? That's rare. And you, my dear, have something to say." He handed me a folder. Inside was a packet with gallery letterhead and a proposal template. "I want to offer you a solo exhibition scheduled 6 months from now. Your voice deserves a full room." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Think it over," she added. "But I hope you say yes." "I think I will," I whispered, because the answer wasn't really in question anymore. Back at my apartment, I opened my sketchbook and flipped through pages I hadn't seen in weeks. Not the final paintings, the messy ones. The bruised watercolors. The ones I made the week after the wedding was cancelled. They weren't pretty, but they were honest. I'd started this journey trying to escape pain. Now I was using it to build something. An email from Janet came later that evening. Subject: Paris office proposal. "Olivia, we've been impressed by your performance since moving abroad. The partners and I want to propose a more permanent arrangement. We'd like you to lead the development of a small Paris division. If you're interested, we can discuss logistics next week." I stared at the screen for a long time. Months ago, Paris was my escape route. Now it was my base of power. I walked to Clea's bookshop the next day, letter in hand. She poured me rose tea and listened as I read Janet's message aloud. "Will you take it?" she asked. "I think I already have." She smiled knowingly. "You've built something here." "No. I became something here." That weekend, I walked to the same riverside spot where I'd painted my first Paris skyline. I opened a new page in my journal. And I wrote, "I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm not grieving. I'm building. A life. A career. A future. One that's mine." I texted Janet that night. "Let's talk details. Paris is home now." Later, as the city fell into twilight, I wrote Lucas one final letter I'd never send. "Lucas, I used to think closure needed a conversation. A perfect, scripted apology. But now I know, closure isn't something you give me. Something I choose. I choose it every day I don't look you up. Every day I speak truth louder than the lies you told. Every painting I make. Every sunrise I wake up to in a city you can't find me in. I don't hate you. I don't love you. I don't need you. Thank you for giving me the push I didn't know I needed. Goodbye for real this time." Oh. I folded it. Tucked it inside my sketchbook. I didn't burn this one. I didn't need to. It had no power over me anymore. The next morning, I met Camille at the gallery and handed her a new portfolio. She flipped through it silently. Stopped at the last painting. A self-portrait. Not literal, no face, no eyes. Just a girl in blue walking alone through a fogged street, lit by a trail of light ahead. "You've found your voice," she said. And for the first time I believed it. The morning of my solo exhibition, I woke up to the sound of church bells and sunlight kissing my face like an overenthusiastic aunt. "Stop flirting," I murmured to the window as I squinted at the brightness outside. "I've got a show to open." My stomach was doing an interpretive dance between anxiety and caffeine deprivation, but my heart was still. Calm. Excited even. Downstairs, Philippe had taped a sign to the café window that read, "Today, Olivia Palmer's big art thingy. You know her. Buy her stuff. She's good." I nearly cried. Instead, I walked in and kissed his cheek. "You're ridiculous." "And you're late," he grumbled, pouring me an espresso. "Now drink this and pretend like you're not secretly nervous you'll sell nothing." "Already pretending." I arrived at Galerie Montsoir wearing a pale blue linen dress and the earrings my mother gave me at 18, because, one day, you'll need to feel like the woman you are becoming. She had no idea how accurate she was. Camille was already there, clipboard in hand, issuing orders like a general preparing for war. When she saw me, her expression softened. You look like someone who's about to be seen. I smiled. I think I finally want to be. The first guest arrived before the doors even opened. Excuse me, I heard the artist is a tortured genius with a killer jawline and mild caffeine addiction? I turned. Zoe. She was wearing a pink jumpsuit that no one should have been able to pull off, holding a bag of pastries and grinning like the devil's bridesmaid. You're early, I said, hugging her tight. I had to beat the crowd. Also, I need exclusive bragging rights. When you're famous, I plan to be insufferable. The gallery buzzed with warm bodies and warmer words. Camille handed me a flute of champagne with a wink. Now your job is to smile, nod, and pretend to be mysterious. Like Marcel. No, she said, horrified. He's not mysterious. He's just French. Speaking of Marcel. He arrived halfway through, dressed in an ironed black shirt and a look of stern disapproval that melted the second he saw my art displayed in full. He walked straight to Unraveling 2, my newest piece, a swirling mix of gold, white and sea green, and stood in front of it without a word. I'm glad you came, I said softly. You were always going to get here, he replied. I just helped you find the door. Then came Clea, arms full of blue hydrangeas and a bottle of wine labeled, for celebrating regret-free lives. You've bloomed, she whispered, squeezing my hands. And I'm not done yet. At 6 p.m., I noticed a couple staring at my Paris rooftops painting. Camille leaned in and whispered, they bought it. And they want to commission another. I didn't even have time to process that before a familiar voice chimed in behind me. You better be charging your worth. Dad. I spun so fast I nearly dropped my champagne. You're here. Of course we're here, my mom said, hugging me. We've been dying to come. But your father insisted we wait until the big reveal. Dad nodded proudly, holding up his phone. I told every customs officer my daughter is the next Georgia O'Keeffe. One of them even Googled you. The gallery was packed by evening. Laughter floated like music. I heard someone say, she's American but she paints like she feels in French. I didn't even know what that meant, but I took it as a compliment. People bought art. Real people. With real money. For the first time I didn't feel like I was proving something. I just was. When the lights dimmed and the last guest left, I sat on the gallery floor with Zoe, eating leftover macarons and sipping cheap champagne straight from the bottle. So, she said, nudging me. How does it feel to be the woman who didn't crumble? I did crumble, I said, leaning my head on her shoulder. I just did it artistically. She laughed. Well, in honor of your glorious comeback, I have a gift. Oh no. Oh yes. She pulled out a shiny envelope. Open it. Inside was a printed itinerary. Train tickets. 5 nights. South of France. Ocean view. Private villa. What is this? Your honeymoon, she said brightly. I don't have a husband. Exactly. And since he bailed, I figured the least I could do is send the bride somewhere fabulous. Zoe. No arguing. You leave tomorrow. Wear something breezy. And promise me you'll flirt with at least one local man. I burst out laughing. You're absurd. And you're overdue for a guilt-free tan line. The next day I boarded the train with nothing but a tote bag, sketchbook, and oversized sunglasses that screamed retired heiress who doesn't know her age. The villa was perched above turquoise cliffs and smelled like rosemary and salt. I painted barefoot. I ate figs off a tree. I danced alone in the kitchen to Edith Piaf while drinking wine. I flirted with a charming baker named Julian, who gave me a baguette for beauty, and another for strength. I wrote postcards I never mailed. And one night, watching the moon slip into the ocean, I whispered, thank you. To Paris. To pain. To the girl I used to be. And the woman I was becoming still. When I returned to Paris, the first thing I saw taped to my apartment door was a note. Stop resting. Start painting. Your solo show awaits. I grinned. Yes, I had work to do. But now I didn't paint to escape. I painted to express. To live. To laugh. To remember what it meant to be whole. The end.